The psychology behind horror and violence. Why do we like to get scared? Do we need to be in a specific age group to fully enjoy a marathon of scary movies? Before we can answer that, we're going to have a little trip into the brain. But first, let's talk about horror and violence and break down the two. What exactly is horror? And what's violence? And how do they relate? Horror, according to the Cambridge Dictionary, is a feeling of extreme fear, terror, or dread. It's mostly associated with its genre and is commonly related to scary images, movies, and games. As for violence, it is a behavior in which physical force is exerted for the purpose of causing damage or injury. Back in the years when we used to dress up in skins of animals and tie bones in our hair, fear was one of our shields and helped us survive. As stated by Dr. Ann Weller, fear gave us the adrenaline, energy, and focus we needed to stay alive. So in a way, it's in our genes to have a natural sense of fear, and based on what she said, adrenaline, energy, and focus are some key factors when trying to be on the offensive side, or in this case, more or less, violent. Like if a saber-toothed tiger were to appear in front of our caveman ancestor, I'm pretty sure their first plan would be to pick up their club and fight. So we can see how these two can exist within one another, fear being the source of our adrenaline and survival, and violence being an option to take in order to survive. We see that in many movies like Saw, Human Centipede, and so on. Now for that field trip into the mind. Well, according to Fink's article on Live Science, a New York University neuroscientist, Joseph Ledoux, has mapped out neuron by neuron how the brain's fear system works. He says the complex human brain, with its enormous capacity for thinking, reasoning, and just plain musing, allows us to worry in ways other animals can't. In other words, fear is not only just a biological reaction, but a combination of our brain's deep-seated evolutionary factors, the primitive amygdala, which is the part of the brain that deals with fear and pleasure, and the more recent or newly learned precautions. With these two constantly conversing within our heads, it allows us to decode an event or scenario and respond with an emotion known as fear. It also affects every person differently, especially when it comes to age. Younger kids tend to have a wilder imagination. In Lawrence Ross's article in Tidewater Parent, he writes that the line between fantasy and reality is blurred for children younger than 6 or 7, which means whatever they see or hear about is as real to them as science is to us. Even adolescents have the same issue, and it doesn't help that movies have gotten bloodier and more gruesome in the last 50 years. So that establishes the age group that is fitted to watch horror movies, or at least the mentality needed to draw a line between reality and fantasy. Still doesn't answer our first question though. Why do we enjoy it so much? Are we just masochists having the need to drown ourselves in self-inflicted paranoia and fear? In one of Saval's articles, she says it's a distraction from the daily routines of life. We want to counter social norms. We seek an adrenaline rush, and we hope to voyeuristically glimpse fright from a distance. That's the key phrase here that explains why we enjoy when we watch or do something scary. It only works when we know we are safe. When we decide to watch a scary movie, for example, our brain has the time to acknowledge that what we are about to see and hear are not true, and therefore releasing a compound present in the brain known as dopamine. Dopamine is a neurotransmitter that helps control the brain's reward and pleasure centers. And thus horror, much like all other genres we enjoy, example romance and comedy, has the ability to expose our system with this compound and make us appreciate something that nearly gave us a heart attack. Good job, terror-making film directors, you just tickled my brain receptors into making more dopamine.